Your salary might be higher today than it was, say, 5 years ago, right? But let's be honest, your lifestyle probably hasn't improved much. Housing is wild, groceries cost more, debt is literally everywhere, and saving? Yeah, it feels almost impossible. So where on earth is all the money going? Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to figure out why a good salary just isn't enough anymore, and to do that, we're actually going to look at, well, the mechanics of a 14th century warlord. I know, it sounds totally crazy. What could Timur the Lame, a ruthless conqueror from the 1300s, possibly have in common with your modern bank account? Well, as it turns out, a lot. Both empire building and wealth building operate on strict, unforgiving laws of growth, leverage, and defense. Look, if you don't understand the rules of the battlefield, you get conquered. And if you don't understand the rules of money, you get trapped in a cycle, working endlessly just to keep your head above water. And this completely illustrates the shift. Back in 1395, Timur literally conquered the Golden Horde for physical wealth, right? He flattened economic centers and hauled gold, master artisans, and livestock back to Samarkand. Today, though, we leverage invisible financial forces to conquer the markets. You don't need a massive army of horse archers to secure your future. What you need are assets, income streams, and a really deep understanding of how money actually moves. Okay, here is our roadmap for today. 1. Empires of wealth and war. 2. Currency, taxes, and tribute. 3. Interest, or the armies of compound growth. 4. Inflation, the invisible siege. And finally, number 5, time, the ultimate conqueror. Let's get into it. Starting right off with part 1, Empires of Wealth and War, or how to build your base. We have to start with the foundations of an empire, whether that's a sprawling military stronghold in Samarkand or just your personal savings account. You absolutely have to lay down a solid base if you want to avoid relying solely on a single, vulnerable paycheck. Now, what's really fascinating here is that Timur didn't just build his empire overnight. It was a slow, calculated 30-year grind. He started out as a minor chief, took some serious arrows to the arm and leg, which, fun fact, is how he got the name Timur the Lame, but he spent decades shifting alliances, surviving brutal winters, and tactically advancing until he was the undisputed master of Transoxiana. Building wealth is exactly the same. It's a strategic marathon, it's not a sprint. And that patience totally mirrors the foundational rule of modern finance. Look at what happens when a modest amount of money is invested at a 7% annual return. It duplicates itself exponentially over a 30-year period. Relying on one single salary to build wealth is just incredibly risky, mostly because a salary doesn't multiply itself. Only invested assets do. When you deploy your money into assets, $100 becomes 200, then 400, multiplying quietly over the decades, until one day you wake up secure. But to build that wealth, you're going to need a bank. And banks aren't these, dragon-guarded vaults, even if dealing with their customer service makes it feel that way sometimes. They operate on a system that constantly deploys your money elsewhere to generate profit. It's called fractional reserve banking. When you deposit $1,000, the bank doesn't just lock it in a safe. They keep a small fraction on hand and lend the rest out, maybe to someone buying a car or starting a business. So the crucial takeaway is that banks are essentially middlemen. They are tactically repositioning wealth, just like Timur repositioned tribal wealth and armies for his campaigns. The bank acts as a matchmaker between your supply of capital and a borrower's demand for it. They're making a massive profit off your troops, paying you just a tiny bit of interest for the privilege of deploying your dollars onto the financial battlefield, while they keep the spoils. Fortunately, we aren't living in the chaotic 14th century where your city could just get wiped off the map in a single afternoon. Today, the U.S. government promises your money is insured up to $250,000. So you can breathe a sigh of relief knowing that even if the bank makes a huge strategic error, your core base is protected from absolute collapse. Moving on to part 2, currency, taxes, and tribute. Basically, the cost of civilization. Let's look at how all of this builds into societal systems of control like currency and trust. Timur extracted his tribute through sheer force and plunder. Today, well, we pay the cost of civilization through various taxes that fund roads, schools, and defense. And honestly, this is a massive reason the middle class feels so trapped right now. You work a hard month, you earn a decent wage, but your bank account only sees a fraction of it. You're taxed on what you earn, what you spend, and what your investments make. And whatever take-home pay is left gets quickly swallowed by the relentlessly rising costs of housing, healthcare, and education. It's the modern ritual of giving away a chunk of your wealth to invisible forces. And just as Tamar relied on alliances and trust with figures like Toktamish, well, before they inevitably went to war, modern lenders use a shadowy algorithm to gauge your reliability. Yes, your credit score. It's not a measure of your wealth, it is a measure of trust. Lenders want to know if they give you resources, will you fulfill your alliance? Payment history is the largest slice of this pie. Ignore it, and you'll get punished with a soul-crushing 27% interest rate that can keep a family financially imprisoned for years. All right, part 3, interest, the armies of compound growth, or your best employee. This is where we get to the absolute most powerful weapon in this entire explainer. Interest is basically money's way of charging rent to exist in someone else's hands. But look at the huge difference here between a boring flat fee, simple interest, and a compounding cheat code. Compound interest duplicates your wealth like an ever-expanding horde of warriors. It means your money has clones, and those clones go out, conquer more territory, and then demand their own rent. It is literally the difference between working for your money and having your money work for you. It's an unstoppable financial cavalry. Now, if you're paying 20% on a credit card, it's a slow burn that turns small mistakes into raging fires. But investing at 7%, that's a time bomb, turning small gains into massive wins. This right here is exactly why the middle class is disappearing. Consumer debt is a total trap. When you owe high interest, you are the conquered territory, paying tribute. That $12 burrito turns into a $50 regret. But when you are the one investing, you become the conqueror. So how do we rig this system back in our favor? Just like Timur learned the rules of nomadic cavalry to outsmart his enemies, like secretly marching his men upstream at night to flank them, here are the exact steps you can take. First, and this is your absolute top priority, kill your high-interest debt. Do whatever it takes because it is an enemy actively destroying you from inside your own gates. Second, invest in diverse assets. Buy tiny slices of companies through stocks, loan money through bonds, or get into real estate. And third, let it sit, feed it regularly, and give it time. Which brings us to part 4, inflation, the invisible siege and the erosion of value. Because even if you play perfectly, you still face this invisible enemy.
Unlike Tamar sacking a city overnight, inflation is a slow, silent economic siege. It's the slow erosion of your purchasing power, quietly stealing your future value. And this is the ultimate trap for anyone relying solely on a fixed salary. You might get a 3% raise this year, which is awesome, but housing and higher education are rising way faster than that paycheck. That $5 bill in your pocket looks exactly the same, but its actual power on the battlefield is shrinking by the day. While Timur created battlefield chaos through feigned retreats and night marches, modern financial chaos is caused by these economic disruptions. Sometimes there's just too much cash chasing too few goods, or global supply chains hiccup and break down, making things harder to produce. When this happens, central banks have to launch a strategic counterattack. They raise interest rates to cool off the spending, effectively starving the market of cheap money just to bring the chaos back under control.
And just as battlefields shift, the economy operates in cycles of booms and painful resets. In the boom phase, everything is great. High spending, drinks are flowing, it feels like a party. But eventually, reality hits. The lights flicker and we enter a recession. Jobs vanish, companies cut costs, and everyone scrambles for necessities. If your entire livelihood depends on a single paycheck during one of these painful resets, you are completely exposed. That is why building an asset base isn't just about getting rich. It is absolutely crucial for survival.
Finally, we reach part 5, time, the ultimate conqueror, the true source of power in all of this. Both history and finance teach us one undeniable lesson. Victory goes to the patient. Wealth isn't built in days. It is built in decades. Money sitting quietly in an investment multiplies slowly at first and then incredibly fast. The top earners out there, they don't have magical abilities. They just refuse to trade their time directly for a flat paycheck forever. They use leverage. They invest early, hold their positions, and let compound growth do its thing for 30 years, turning their capital into an unstoppable, self-replicating force. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Now that you know the rules of the game, are you going to let inflation silently sock your wealth, or will you use compound interest to conquer your financial future? The middle class is disappearing because too many people are trying to fight a modern financial war using outdated tactics. By understanding assets, eliminating toxic debt, and allying yourself with the unstoppable power of time, you can step out of the trap and build your own empire.